ساعي وامنح الناس حبك بيض الله قلبك بيض الله قلبك كن سموحا لخصمك ألقى خصمك أحبك بيض الله قلبك بيض الله قلبك واحتفل بالمودة إنما
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Sulaimaan Ravat Show. We are coming to you live this evening from our studios here in Sunny Hill, Johannesburg. Right, so, just a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Eid and Ramadan had lapsed and it was the first and second program after Eid. Well, the caravan of life moves on. Ramadan has become a memory and now we're already starting to talk about Hajj. Before I talk about our topic for this evening, which is Hajj, I just want to mention this point that, it's almost 1 month now. We're moving towards the end of the month of Shawwal since Ramadan has completed and terminated. It's a good time for us to take stock that am I slowly but surely slipping into the same old habits that were in my life before the month of Ramadan, or have I managed to some extent to remain a better Muslim after the month of Ramadan? Because always we were explaining this point in the lead up to the great month, that Ramadan is not only about securing reward by doing various good deeds, it's about coming closer to Allah and remaining closer to Allah. Of course, you cannot do as much out of Ramadan as you were doing in Ramadan. It's a specified period, ayyam ma'dudat. It has its own climate and an atmosphere. You can't read as much Quran or give as much charity or spend as much time in the masjid. But there needs to be more spirituality. You need to be closer to Allah. Your routine as a Muslim needs to be better than what it was before Ramadan. And that is how every Ramadan brings you closer to Allah and keeps you closer to Allah. So a good point for us over which to introspect and reflect. Otherwise, before we realize another 10 months will go and then we will be on the verge of another Ramadan, but we will be just where we were last year prior to the great month. Anyway, we now turn our focus to Hajj. And very soon the Hujjaj will start to depart from our country. The Sahuk mission team, the first part of it, has already departed. You may have seen the updates on social media and the various platforms. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to get some updates on Hajj for this year with the president of Sahuk, and that is Moulana Muhammad Vaid. Now, there's quite a bit that we need to cover in terms of the last 12 months. That's going to form part of our initial discussion. Then we'll talk about Hajj this year. That will be the second part of our discussion. And towards the end, we will open the lines and we'll give you an opportunity to constructively and respectfully ask any question that you would want to ask, or make a comment that you would like to make. But for now, we got some ground to cover in terms of the last 12 months. Moulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan for the opportunity.
When we look back at the last 12 months, what would you say have been some of the important developments in the last year?
Well, alhamdulillah, looking back on the last Hajj, it was almost a problem-free Hajj. Went on relatively smoothly. Post the last Hajj, we had about 15 complaints that were submitted to Sahuk, of which all have been resolved in negotiations with the respective operators. Much has happened on Sahuk's side as far as the protocol visit to the kingdom as per the invitation of the Ministry of Hajj to negotiate the different protocol agreements that are signed and concluded with the Ministry of Hajj and its different affiliate departments. So the preparation for the oncoming Hajj is well in advance of almost 11 months of the year prior to the actual event of Hajj.
Last year we had biometrics coming into effect for the first time, and it was especially difficult, I understand, for South Africans who were living abroad. They had to come all the way back to South Africa to do the biometrics, and it's a very costly exercise. Have you addressed that with the officials when you went on your protocol trip? Is there any update in that regard?
Yes, biometrics was a first for South Africa, for those who are visiting the kingdom. But we need to also keep in mind that biometrics is well over for many other countries also that people would like to visit and tour, etc. It was the first for our Hujjaj. The company that was outsourced with the task, also it was a first for them, and many technical issues were experienced. We have addressed this with the respective company, and we've also addressed these issues with the Ministry of Hajj and the respective departments that are in charge of this. You allude to the fact of the South Africans that are staying abroad. They have given us some sort of surety that they will take this into cognizance, and they will try and address this issue to try and make it as an amenable possible process and most cost effective if be so.
The e-gate system, it was meant to speed up the clearance of Hujjaj, to make it much faster. How did that work last year?
Maybe a little bit background of the e-gate system. It's the e-hajj system which is overseen by a company in the kingdom known as Sijil. This has been implemented by the ministry for the last 5 years, and year on year it sees progression and advancements to the system in many different respects, as far as procuring the process for the Hujjaj from even prior to departure. And this has eased the process drastically. To give one example, when Hujjaj will arrive in Jeddah, they've got a maximum period of time of clearing the Hujjaj from the time of arrival in Jeddah to clearing customs and departing from that airport of 2.5 hours. And if you land in Medina Munawwara, they have a set target of at least an hour to 90 minutes. This has been very closely achieved last year, and we know years gone by, people would say they would wait at the Hajj terminal for 12, 15, 16, 17 hours. So basically, the entire reason for adopting these different processes is to ease the journey of the Hujjaj, so this entire process in the kingdom hosting the Hujjaj well over.
Last year, there was that extra 1,000, if I remember correctly, in terms of the quota that was given very close to Hajj, and then it was declined at the time. What happened, just to refresh people's memories?
To place on record, this happened for the last 2 years, and it was close on to the 1st or 2nd of Dhul Hijjah, where we were granted an extra 1,000 quota. Now, while the ministry would grant us this quota at past the 11th hour, literally, it is just not taking the quota and allowing people to go. Together with that, there are many different requirements that we need to observe and we need to fulfill, as far as securing the housing, in other words, the hotel that which the Hujjaj will stay in, the transport, make the necessary payments, paying the tanazzul, and the list goes on. In the time frame for which that is required, it is almost impossible at that past 11th hour to procure all those services when all the operators are already in the kingdom, rooms and buildings are already sold off. It is very difficult to secure services at that point in time. Hence, it is not practical for us to accept that and fulfill the requirements at the same time. Nevertheless, we use that as a negotiating tool. And when the protocol team visited the kingdom earlier this year, we brought this up and we used it, saying that you had given us this at the 11th hour, and look at us with an eye of mercy and grant it to us earlier enough so that we can secure the necessary and abide to the necessary process and fulfill your requirements. One advantage to that, what came out of the protocol discussions, was it was mentioned in the protocol agreement with the Ministry of Hajj, in the presence of the Deputy Minister of Hajj, that the quota for South Africa for the forthcoming year of 1440 will be 2,500. They have exceeded to giving us an extra 1,000, and thus we're enjoying the quota of 3,500. And they also included a clause which read that they acknowledge that SAUC has requested a quota of 6,000. To date, nothing has yet materialized. Yes, the question is, if it still comes, what we will do. It all depends on the timing, and then the necessary discussions will unfold to see whether it could be accommodated or not.
Did they give you any logical explanation as to why they give you an increase in the quota literally a week before Hajj?
Unfortunately, no. That's what we just receive as far as correspondence, and so be it.
Now, when you go for the protocol, do you query and tell them, surely they're aware of all these practicalities, that you're going to do all of these things, and the Hajj operators have got to conclude their formalities, and they're already in the kingdom by that date, housing and everything else that you mentioned. Is there a reason why it happens at this 11th hour? Is it that they wait to see how many people come into the kingdom and check whether there's latitude to accommodate more?
Well, there's no specific reasoning given to us. Yes, we can assume that there could be such reasons. But when they had recorded our request for 6,000, we were told that this is bound to the royal decree, and once a royal court sits and they grant a decree on this, then we will be given that exemption. Like we said, to date, nothing has materialized, and we have not heard any information to date.
Last year, when this news came out that Sahuk was granted that extra 1,000, albeit well past the 11th hour, as you mentioned, there were those in the community who said, but if you granted a 1,000 at such a late hour, then why just not open it up to the public and let each one figure it out for himself? You take the accreditation, make your own bookings, find your own accommodation, sort yourself out, and Sahuk could have an excuse when faced by the ministry to say it came so late we couldn't do all the formalities. The argument from some in the community was, don't deprive people if there's an opportunity. Tell them, look, here it is, but these are the perils. You'll have to figure your own way in the kingdom. Is that possible?
Well, that would be the most simplistic way of looking at it, but unfortunately not so, because the protocol agreement discusses and dictates as to what requirements we need to fulfill. Just to give some explanation as far as the e-Hajj system. Sahuk is the custodian of the visas that is allocated to the quota by the kingdom and the Ministry of Hajj. The accreditation is granted, which is an internal mechanism that Sahuk has adopted, and every country has its own accreditation process that they have adopted. Then Sahuk has access to the e-Gate system, which in turn we grant access to those accredited Hajj operators. Every single Haji that has been accredited needs to then comply with his portal that is given access on the ministry system. And what that means, he needs to have contracts in place for housing. In other words, wherever he's going to stay, whether it's Mecca, Medina, Azizia, there's got to be contracts in place as far as his transport from point to point. All payments need to be made, including the tanazzul, the 5 days of Hajj, the transport and the housing, until every requirement is fulfilled. And when we say contracts of housing, it needs to be in accredited housing by the Ministry of Hajj. So the ministry has to verify that you are going to stay in a hotel that fulfills their requirements as far as housing, of the number of people in per room, what services will be provided, etc. Once all that is complied with, then only that single Hajj's portal will turn green. Then Sahuk has to verify and grant the permission for a visa to be issued. Now, we have operators that secure housing and sign contracts with hotels either for a building or X amount of rooms. And this happens in negotiation months before. For this to happen at that time, it's not possible for us to fulfill that requirements. Although simplistically we say, if we compare it to the days gone by, people would just go and they will find their own accommodation. Yes, that was the time. That is what people had enjoyed, but it's not the case today. And there are many a reason, whether we agree or not, why the kingdom is moving in this direction. And that is to see that how people do not get the wrong end of the deal, to eliminate fraud. Logistics are important as far as what health services, transport, food, all these arrangements need to be in place. For 1, 2, 3, but when it goes into the hundreds and thousands, it has a different impact. Another great aspect that is pertinent to the kingdom is that of safety and security and disaster management. So all these things also need to be taken into consideration, and hence that is why they put all these different structures in place.
Right, time for our first break. When we come back, inshallah, we continue the discussion. Okay, so we're talking to the president of Sahuk, Moulana Mohammed Vaid, and we're getting an update on what happened in the last 12 months, and then we're going to move shortly, inshallah, on to this year's Hajj. And as I said, towards the end of the program, we'll give you an opportunity to call in and ask any questions or to make any comments. Now, Moulana, you were speaking earlier on about, that visas that came at the 11th hour, etc. Another aspect that came to the fore, although it's not a new phenomenon, is the aspect of the mujamala visas. People who are granted visas directly from the embassy. I don't know if it would be correct to describe it as a kind of courtesy visa for those people who are not familiar with the Arabic term. What kind of challenge did it create in the kingdom?
Yes, mujamala visas is what is known as a courtesy visa. This is actually at the behest of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And it's granted to every embassy in the world, in every country, intended for people in government, ministers, senior people, senior ulama, etc. We do know that there are many that have secured it over the counter, and what has been the implications. The implication one is for SAUC, and not only for SAUC, it is also for the different departments in the kingdom, like the Muassasa, the Ministry of Hajj, etc. And on our last protocol, many of the authorities, actually in 3 different meetings, they raised the issue and the concern of the mujamalas. Again, if we say, it sounds ironic, that if it is coming from them and it's still hampering their process, why is it so? Well, it is 2 different departments. We have engaged the authorities, and we will continue to say that let us be able to assist you in managing this process. The process is 2 separate processes from the very onset. And unfortunately, not sufficient information is forthcoming officially that we can then share to the public and say that whoever has secured such a visa, this is how he should go about and how he should contract and what he needs to do. And hence we have heard on the street that there are many people that have got the wrong end of the stick. There is not sufficient of a support structure for them while they in the kingdom, on the mashayir, on the 5 days of Hajj, etc. Many had to pay a few times over. So these are all instances that happen. As far as the domino effect, where does it affect SAUC? Yes, if we are told that there are Hujjaj coming on arrival, and one of SAUC's duties is to receive the Hujjaj at every point of arrival and departure. If we are told that there are 50 Hujjaj and maybe 4 are SAUC visa holders, the rest are maybe Mujamala holders, we will see to them. But if we are not informed correctly, obviously it has a rippling effect on the timing of our staff, how they will operate, etc. Likewise on the mashayir, a space is allocated per person. So if X amount of space is allocated on Mina and you have 10 other people coming that are not supposed to be in that camp, it's going to have a rippling effect on the infrastructure and the logistics that are provided and catered for. So yes, if somebody has such a visa, he should try and inquire as to what process he needs to adhere to. If the relevant information is given to SAUC, we will most definitely disseminate that information as well.
So was there a physical challenge in Mina in terms of camp allocation? Were those who had Mujamala visas allocated a different space where they needed to go and sleep in Mina?
Yes, like I said, the process is totally separate. We fall under the Field Office Service of 21, and I think the Mujamala falls under 29. So from the time that your passport is received, from the time you land with the Wukala, that is the United Agents Office, it follows 2 separate processes. Your busing is separate, the routes that you use is separate, the camp allocation is at 2 separate places, the camp pricing is totally separate. So we do have the overlapping. For example, you have a family that is going and they have a relative that has a Mujamala visa, he wants to be with his family. Logistically, it's not supposed to be so, and also practically, it's not supposed to be so. If it does happen, it will impede. This has been happening for the last many years. Last Hajj, the authorities had taken a bit of a firmer stance and they had made a proclamation, and their directive was given to all operators and all Hajj missions that they will not tolerate this, and they had some sort of a greater check than previous years to try and ensure that Mujamala visa holders try to accede to the different process that has been allocated for them.
Earlier on, you spoke about 15 complaints, and I think that's, if you look at it in the context of 2,500 Hajjis last year?
3.5.
3.5, and you've got 15 complaints. What were the nature of those complaints, and what is your process of dealing with it?
Well, we have a complaints committee, so when a complaint is received, we put out a newsletter post-Hajj, and we open a period of time where people should forward their complaints in writing. The complaint is assessed. If they feel that there's some relativeness to it, that it needs to be taken forward, or if it could be first sorted out by ourselves, we will address it. If it needs a further intervention where we need to call up the different parties, it is then corresponded to the said operator. The parties, if a negotiation comes to a settlement, well and good. If we need to go through a sitting and try to mediate a settlement, we'll try to the best of our ability to try and resolve the issue to the best possible manner.
Now, the medical team, I saw a stat, 12,000 patients were dealt with last year. But how is it you got 2,500 people going for Hajj? Or is it the same people coming repeatedly? Was it 12,000 patients or 12,000 cases?
Effectively, we had a quota of 3,500 last year, but every visit to our clinic is recorded. Every person that comes in there, a card is open for a person and his visit is recorded. And in the like, we have recorded in excess of 12,000 visits to our clinic. So most definitely there are people that are visiting the clinics repeatedly, and no person will be turned away if he could be assisted to the best of our ability.
If we look at the last year, I've picked up from time to time on social media that you guys have been doing some roadshows, doing some outreach. Tell us about that.
Well, outreach is visits to the communities where we will try and visit the community and explain what is SAUC, who is SAUC, what are our processes, what is the need for these different processes, how it works, for people to understand and try and embrace the system that we form part of the global picture of the broader Ummah. And it is something we need to be looking upon positively because we plug into the greater Ummah. Quota is a very big issue and people will talk about it all the time. Just to mention, Indonesia this year has a quota of 212,000. The waiting list on record is approximately 15 years. If you look at Malaysia, it said that the waiting list is something in excess of 60 years. So comparatively, we're still better off, but we need to understand what is the reason for all of these systems and processes to be in place is for the benefit of one and all, and just not the South African Muslim. That is as far as the outreach program. The roadshow is more specific to those Hujjaj that are accredited for that specific year. In the past, we used to have one roadshow where we would give all the information at one given time. From last year, we had split the roadshow in two different periods. So at the very beginning period of the accreditation, we would have a roadshow where we will then explain to those that are accredited what is necessary for them to do, how would they accept the accreditation, how they need to choose an operator, or how they need to contract, etc. Then much later, we would have the second roadshow, and in that roadshow we would have most people in attendance, those that have been accredited, and discussions that will unfold is the actual journey and where will SAUC support fit in and what is SAUC's role throughout the journey of Hajj and the mission, the clinics, etc.
All right, now, as part of outreach, as part of roadshows, there are critics of SAUC, and I mean, that is well known. Have you been engaging with them in the last year? How's that going?
Well, critics will always be there, and maybe it is a good sign because that always keeps one on our toes. And wherever possible, we've tried to engage and give the correct answers and try to set the record straight. Alhamdulillah, there are many that will be there that want to reason. The unfortunate scenario is that we still find the emotional side of people overtaking them and overwhelming them. And we need to remove emotion from the equation. Hajj is an emotional ibadah. It is something that every Muslim rightfully yearns for. But like I said, there are processes that need to be in place, and that is what we need to respect and understand the need for it and why is it there. So it's just not a few people that have just sat and brought about certain processes, but it's taking different permutations and aspects into consideration when policy is formed.
Moving on now to this year's Hajj 1440-2009. You explained earlier on about what happened with regards to the quota and, was it 6 or 6,500, but that hasn't come to fruition yet. So the likelihood of it now at this stage, slim?
Well, we cannot say. If and when it happens, then the discussions will unfold and see how best we can accommodate it. Alhamdulillah, like you mentioned in the introduction, our mission, half of the mission has already departed. We had 2 departures already. Work has already begun on the ground, and they are preparing themselves to welcome the arrival of the first Hujjaj, which should be next week, Wednesday, inshallah.
So how many people will make up the mission team this year?
The mission this year is made up of 40 persons, which include the medical personnel, which is made up of doctors and nurses. So the total mission was made up of 40, inshallah.
Now, there was this list of 7,000 or thereabouts that you guys released, I think, in October sometime last year. Explain to us what was the thinking behind that and how that works?
Okay, we have what we call the registration list. So post-Hajj, when everything is complete and concluded, we then released a list of about 7,000 names, which was called a registration list, and it had a disclaimer to it, which makes it dynamic. That list is not finite, but it just with this intent to give people some sort of an idea of their position in the queue and what is the possibility of them being accredited, obviously based on the quota, so that some preparation could be made. This has helped. We've done this for the last few years, and it seems to be streamlining the process. Nevertheless, even with that being done, This year we still saw a high rate of cancellations of at least 60%. Now what happens when there is a cancellation? So we say either cancellation or transfer. So a person is accredited and he cannot make it for Hajj this year, and he transfers his accreditation to the forthcoming year. We would then go to the person who's next in the queue. So accreditation is purely based on date and time priority of application, and that's how the queuing system unfolds.
Now, this high cancellation rate of 60%, what do you attribute it to? Just tough economic times, or is it more than that?
Well, inevitably that is the highest possible reason. It is the economic crisis that's facing not only South Africans but world over. And while we do reason with it and we might empathize in many different ways, we need to understand that all these conditions that prevail is from above. And Allah knows best that why such conditions are prevailing upon the Ummah, and we need to take stock of ourselves.
A quick question before we go to the break. You spoke about transferring of accreditation. You can't make it this year. You push it over to your accreditation to the next year. Do you have a situation where people are, year on year pushing over the accreditation and 5 or 6 years can lapse? Is there a penalty then in terms of their rating if they do that?
As per the policy, it states that SAUC, you may defer for 3 years, whereafter SAUC may penalize you. To date, we have not penalized anybody, but people that have deferred their accreditation for more than 3 years, we have then put them into a cancel state and inform them that the day or the year you feel that you would be ready, inform us and we will reinstate you to your position in the queue. So by default, so they are not causing a backlog or holding back others who might be ready to go, but at the same time, they have their position in a silo the day that their situation materializes.
All right, we're going to go for a break, but I'm going to open the line, 011 086 7777. We take your calls. As I said, constructive, respectful questions and comments. We have the president of SAUC in studio. You can start calling in, and after the break, inshallah, we'll take the callers. All right, so welcome back. We are coming to you live this evening from our studios here in Sunny Hill, Johannesburg, on this last Friday in June. By next week, this time, we'll be into the second half of the year. It's midwinter, as you can hear. The flu is all around. Some people have it worse than others. Some people I know have been knocked out for 4 or 5 days consecutively. May Allah keep us all healthy, and may Allah grant complete shifa to those who are not well. But we're talking about Hajj, and we've got the president of SAUC in studio this evening. So the lines are open, 011 086 7777. You can call in. You have a question, you have a comment, you have a suggestion. But as I said, let's just keep it constructive and let's keep it respectful. I trust that the lines will work, inshallah, and that we won't have too many technical difficulties. So we await your calls if indeed you have any questions. But in the meanwhile, I'm just going to continue the discussion. All right, we've got a call on the line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Caller, you live on air. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I think what you need to do is that you need to put down the volume on your TV set. Otherwise, you're going to get a relay and it's going to confuse you and it's going to confuse us. So turn down the volume on the TV set and you'll be able to hear through the telephone set. Are you still there, caller? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. All right, the lines are open, 011 086 7777. Moulana, the annual meeting with DIRCO, has this taken place in the last year? Has there been anything different on the agenda, anything new?
Yes, DIRCO is the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and which we work very closely with, and we really garner the support, not only here in South Africa, but also in the Kingdom, where the Consul General, who is in office under DIRCO in Jeddah, he accompanies us to all the meetings on the protocol, etc. And yes, either biannual or annually, we do meet with DIRCO in Pretoria, where we give a report back post-Hajj as to the happenings, etc.
I'm just going to ask you to hold that thought. We've got a call on the line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum, you're live on air? Technical gremlins. Let's hope that they can resolve that. You were saying more?
Yes, so we do enjoy a very credible relationship with DIRCO, and this has taken place. Obviously, now with the elections that have passed, we see a new minister in office. We have corresponded, and we are trying to secure a meeting this time, not only with the Middle Eastern desk, but with the minister herself.
I know this is a recurring question, but again, for the purpose of those people who may not be aware of the answer, you as SAHOK, you're dealing directly with the Ministry of Hajj, you're doing, protocols, you go on a trip there annually. What's the Department of International Relations and Cooperation got to do with it now? How do they fit into the equation?
Well, the South African government has a responsibility to take care of its citizens wherever they may travel world over. And likewise, even though we are going for a pilgrimage, whether it be Hajj or Umrah, they are concerned of the citizens when they are abroad, and there is certain necessary requirements for them to fulfill, whether it may be disaster management or evacuation, natural disasters, whatever it may be. And there are many other interests that they do have in collaboration with the counterparts in the different kingdom when it comes to international relations. So yes, being Hajj a more specific religious aspect, this is where we give them the support, and we have this working relationship between ourselves.
All right, the lines are open, 011 086 7777. Just be patient with us. They seem to be a bit of a challenge, but hopefully it will get sorted and you'll be able to hear us. But make sure when you call in, before you call in, turn down the volume on your TV set, otherwise you get a relay and feedback. All right, we've got a call on the line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Ji, sister, your question.
I would just like to ask the President, inshallah, if there are so many cancellations for Hajj, why not make it a possibility for those people that want to make a Hajj on behalf of a deceased member of the family possible? It may be that we have made the Hajj previously some 10, 15 years ago for ourselves, but why not make it possible for us to make Hajj on behalf of maybe a deceased mother or a deceased grandmother?
Okay, Jazakallah for the question, sister.
Jazakallah khair.
So the sister is saying that you've got 60% cancellation rate. Why not allow repeat Hajjis to go and make Hajj Badal, make Hajj on behalf of a deceased person?
Jazakumullah khairan, a very reasonable question. We need to understand the dynamics, and that is, like we said, that accreditation is done on a time and date priority of application. Currently, we are busy with accreditation of applicants who have applied in the beginning of 2015. And we have a current backlog of circa 30,000 first-time applications. So it puts us in the circumstance that how do you justify giving either a repeated opportunity over one who is a first-time, or giving an opportunity to one who wants to do a nafil over one who has to do
so
the
even
farad.
though there's a high cancellation rate, there's still so many first-timers in the queue. Let's go to the next caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam, Moulana.
Yes.
Yeah, this is one question. If I go for Umrah every 5 years, do I have to pay that amount for my visa?
All right. Jazakallah for the question, brother. Not directly Hajj related, but it is a question on the minds of many people.
Yes, the last credible information that has been corresponded to us in our discussions is that since 2016, the first Umrah that is performed, you will not be charged for the visa. Every subsequent Umrah thereafter, there will be a charge of 2,000 Saudi riyals. Now, while we do understand that it's exorbitant, and we've raised this with the authorities, and we know many other countries have also raised this, in spite of all that, the numbers are not dropping as far as the Umrah is concerned. If we look at this last Ramadan, the kingdom had issued 7 million Umrah visas. So yes, it is exorbitant, but alhamdulillah, people are still visiting. But this is what we know as far as the policy is. Your first Umrah is free, every subsequent Umrah will be a charge.
Right, the lines are still open, 011 086 7777. If you have any questions or comments for the President of SAHOK. I've seen, I think in the last day or two, a new initiative with Mobily. Okay, let's take the caller first. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Caller is gone. Tell us about this initiative with Mobily and the SIM cards.
Yes, over the last years, on the protocol visits, we do meet the different telecom service providers. Last year, we had negotiated with 2 service providers, that was STC and Mobily. Both had furnished us with SIM cards and with some sort of a package, which we handed over to operators, which in turn needed to be distributed to the relative Hajjaj. This year we've managed to secure the similar feature with the Mobile, and these SIM cards will be given to the operators, and together with your passport, when you will receive it, you should receive a Mobile SIM card as well.
All right, caller, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, inshallah, we continue the discussion.
جميل المساعي وامنح الناس حبك جميل المساعي وامنح الناس حبك.
Okay, welcome back. We're now into the final segment of the program. We're talking Hajj with the President of Sahuk, Moulana Muhammad Vaid. We have a call on the line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. How are you, bhai?
Alhamdulillah. Your question?
The Moulana take 40 staff, the 40 staff to Medina, Makkah, and how many poor people he takes for Hajj?
Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. You're taking 40 staff. Why not take poor people?
The Sahuk mission that is taken is as per the requirement of the protocols that is signed, where they dictate that we need to bring mission workers to facilitate and assist with processes and procedures in giving a support structure to the South African Hujjaj. We try to minimize the numbers to the best possible of our ability to work with the least amount in the contingent, and thereafter the benefit of the excess visas is given over to the Hujjaj. Now, I like the point where the brother brings about given to poor Hujjaj. Yes, poor Hujjaj is a sentiment and which we can also reason to, and we need to understand that the obligation of Hajj has certain criterion and conditions, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mention, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. That person who has the istita'a. So we are not there as a welfare organization, although if the opportunity does permit, we would most definitely like to do so. We are here to facilitate those people that are going for Hajj, and in respect to those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has first given the ability for them to undertake the journey. And ability is not only the financial ability, but it extends to health. It extends to the open passage that, in those days, open passage would be interpreted as a safe passage and there's no wars, etc. In today's time, we should interpret that to be whether the quota does permit us to go or not. Because obviously, world over, every Muslim has a desire. So the permutations in which policy is made up is in a framework where all these different aspects are taken into consideration.
All right, let's take the next caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay. There's been a lot of talk in the last year, maybe two, about the very healthy surplus that Sahuk has. What's the current state of that surplus? And if I remember correctly, in the past, the response was we need to do infrastructure development. We don't have permanent staff. All right, I'm going to give you a minute to chew on that. Let's take the caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Ji, sister, your question?
Alaikum salam. I just want to ask about the Umrah. They say the first visa is free. You don't have to pay for. But after 2 years, you don't need to pay too.
Okay, this question has been asked. Moulana has responded, but he'll give a quick response, inshallah.
Initially, that was what was corresponded to the public, that every once in 2 years, as it stands currently, authorities have said the first one is free and every subsequent one will require payment.
Irrespective of whether it's 2 years or 10 years.
Irrespective.
You go second time in your life for Umrah, you pay.
Yes, since 2016.
All right. Now, coming back to that question, right? What's the surplus amount currently? And that which Sahuk have spoken about in the past, that we need the surplus to be able to start getting infrastructure in place. We need better equipped officers. We need permanent staff because we're too volunteer based. Has that process started?
The process has started. It's a long way still to go. As far as infrastructure development, yes, our systems at the offices have been advanced. We now enjoy a centralized email ticketing system. So if anybody sends an email to our office, it goes to a central infrastructure. As far as the wealth asset that we do possess, and that is the entire registry database, which has been custom made. The software support for that has been customly written, where that encompasses the application, the registration, the accreditation, where everything is recorded of each and every person. And as we know, software enhancements will continuously happen as far as this is concerned. And we have earmarked many different aspects to enhance this process and this facility. Obviously, other securities need to be in place as far as backup, as far as the POPI Act, holding of personal information, etc. So there has to be some sort of legal standing to it. Another major development in this regard is where we're looking at an external IT audit. So just to simplistically explain, who has access to the system, what type of access does a person have, what level of access, who can adopt any change to any application, etc., what are the checks and balances, and how all of this is going to be checked, and a reporting structure and a framework. So to say, a policing mechanism over all of this.
Just before we go to the caller, all of this, what you've mentioned, and the others in terms of infrastructure development, it can't come out from the current year-on-year fees that you get from the Hujjaj. Do you require a surplus?
Yes, now coming back to that, what is the income that SAOC has? Income is of the nature first of registration fees, which we cannot secure a stable budget for, because we do not know whether today 10 people are going to apply or register or 50 people are going to register. So that fluctuates from time to time. The second stream of income is your registration, your accreditation fee, which has not gone up since last year for 1,500 Rand. Over the past years, that generally gets expensed as part of the mission costs, because they are, the mission that is taken in, as a requirement of the protocol, the clinics that are set up, medication that is sourced from the country of origin, and there's a whole lot that goes together with that. The third source of income is a accreditation fee for that operator. So these are the incomes that we do have. And fourthly, it is the investments, that how we have managed the funds with such prudence that has seen us to what we have. But there are different other dimensions that affect this as far as expenditure. In the last years, where we saw maybe there were 2 years' income and only 1 year had been expense in one financial year. The fluctuation of the currency has an impact on SAOC as well, as we need to pay for logistics in the kingdom, etc. Another dynamic to this entire scenario is as far as the finance is concerned. I spoke about the forex, that exchange. So there are different aspects that SAOC is also affected when it comes to managing its funds. So we need to take all of this into consideration when we're saying there's just a surplus.
What's the current surplus amount? And is it growing, or are you starting to take from there and develop infrastructure?
Well, it is growing because of the investments. Another factor that contributes to it is the quota. If the quota is set increases, the income is increased. If the quota goes back, then obviously the income is decreased. Effectively, as per the equation that decides on the quota, South Africa is not even eligible for 1,000. For every 1,000 Muslim population, one visa is allocated. According to the last statistics that taken in 1994, since unfortunately the Statistician General of South Africa has removed religious denomination, according to the United Nations and a record with the Ministry of Hajj, South African Muslim population is 986,000. So effectively they feel they're doing us a favor. If they decide tomorrow to go back to that, and we're only eligible to 1,000, obviously it's going to put us
so the current
at the back end. Well, as per the last year's financials, it was in the region of 13 million. Obviously, this year's financials are in process and will be adopted in the next few months.
Finally, Moulana, to conclude the program, every organization, every company these days, every business is looking to transform, is looking to check its constitution, check its hierarchy, its structures, its electoral processes, and see how to improve it, how to modernize it, how to make it more in alignment with the contemporary practicalities of things. Is this something that SAOC is doing as well?
Well, yes, most definitely so, and everything needs to evolve. We need to remember that at the highest level of policy making is the 28 member organizations, which most of our ulama bodies also form part of the National General Council, like the Jamiatul Ulama South Africa, United Ulama Council of South Africa, known as UCSA, the MJC, Darul Ihsan, Jamiatul Ulama KZN, Sunni Jamiatul Ulama, Sunni Ulama Council. Now, these are all pivotal bodies and that are instrumental into the policy-making framework of SAOC. So it's, from there, that is where the board is elected, but it's dictated to by the National General Council. So yes, we should understand that our allegiance is or should be with, if not some of these theological bodies, and inshallah they do keep the different aspects that are out there in the public into consideration when deciding on policy.
Shukran for your time as always. It was a pleasure having this interaction with you, and we appreciate that you took out the time.
Jazakumullah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
To our viewers, until next week, inshallah, we will be hosting Moulana Ahmed Aku. We'll be talking on the very important topic of depression. Until that program next week, fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.